Is it time for WIAGW yet? More like WIAGW. WIAGW, perhaps? Ah, fuck it. WIAGSA. WIAGW. Yeah! Breakdown. It's WIAGW, 'cause I said so. Welcome to WIAGW.
That's pretty good, right?
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Why I'm a Genius Weekly. Huge thanks to Nexus Mania for that absolutely beautiful animated WIAGW intro. By the way, I'm recording on a new phone. Do you like it? Do you think it's good? Let's skip the bullshit and get right into why we're here, the topic of this video. 6 months ago in WIAGW, I made a video with a very deliberately chosen title. The best One Piece villain in over a decade, featuring the Minister of Flower of Totland himself, Charlotte Katakuri of the Big Mom Pirates. I'm not gonna waste your time going over the content of that video again, because if you want to do that, just watch the video. Click over here. Thing is though, I made that video only a few chapters into the big fight that was happening between Monkey D. Luffy and Charlotte Katakuri, and now that 6 months have passed, that fight has concluded and the arc has come to a close, and I am here to revisit the issue as I promised I would. So that was a pretty bold claim to make in the middle of an arc, in the middle of a big shonen fight between a protagonist and a villain. That is the best villain in a very long time. So now the time has elapsed and I've had time to digest everything. Does that hold true? Well, not quite. Rather than the best villain in 10 years, is it fair to say that Katakuri is the best villain in 20 years, the entire length of One Piece? No, that's not quite fair either. I think we can go one further. There's another phrase that describes Katakuri a little bit better. Action Giraffe, take it away.
He's the best character in all of One Piece.
He's the best character in all of One Piece! Okay. Now, what's with all the hullabaloo? What is it that Katakuri has done to make him literally the greatest character in all of One Piece, and the most popular in Japan's history? Well, let's pick up where we left off, shall we? Groovy! In my last video, I primarily discussed what a proud, honorable, and downright good-hearted member of the Big Mom Pirates he really was. Not to mention the most intimidating, the most respected, etc, etc. But we had only just gotten past chapter 883, which is what really compelled me to make that video, in which we find out that Katakuri's proud facade belies a shameful secret. It's the fact that despite his reputation is to have never failed, never to have lost a battle, never even to have lied down on his back on the ground. I gotta reiterate that because it's such an amazing, hilarious point. But in his fight with Luffy, he is exposed for the man he truly is. Nani? A bit lackadaisical, a bit messy, not the prim and proper, perfect big brother that he portrays himself as. The dude's into some shameful donuts. Let's not forget that among the Big Mom Pirates and Totland, he is the Minister of Flour. Making donuts and pastries, that's Katakuri's bag. And just looking at this place he rules, you can kind of infer a lot about his personality, don't you think? And remember, a real man is fueled by sugar. Judging by that, Americans truly are the most powerful people in the world. Just at that moment, Katakuri had already become one of my favorite One Piece characters of all time. He's got that incredible intimidating factor, but also a secret so goofy, so silly, that it boggles the imagination and is just pure Eiichiro Oda One Piece joy. No one else could write a character so utterly ridiculous and yet so badass. Because that was his other great aspect. He's such a technical, intelligent, efficient fighter who wants to get the job done. Or so it appeared. Because as things move along from there in the fight, more information about who Katakuri comes out and changes everything. Up to this point in the fight, Katakuri is exhibiting dominance against Luffy in every single capacity. Speed, strength, technique, intelligence, observation haki, the ability to see the fucking future, devil fruit ability, including awakening. It is overwhelming the amount of power that Katakuri has. But to be fair, this was mostly against base form Luffy. And at the beginning of the fight, he got stopped from going Gear 4th by Katakuri, who was smart enough to not let him power up. Now, I just want to take a pause real quick and address the concept of villains one more time. Villains or antagonists, what is the purpose of an antagonist in a story? Especially a long-running shonen like One Piece. Well, here's the thing about it. Luffy is a character who is relatively static and unchanging. In some small ways he learns and evolves and grows, but that's mostly in terms of like physical strength and power. Luffy's always been a kind of do whatever he feels like kind of guy who occasionally has moments of dedication or strategy or clarity in a way to solve a problem that his friends weren't able to perceive. But the fact of the matter is, Luffy from the start of One Piece to now really has not changed much. And that's to the strength of a long-running shonen. You don't want your protagonist to be a wildly different guy unless you're really smart about it. But One Piece isn't that kind of series. Instead, what we get as we read a series like this is the ever-changing environments that our characters go to and the new characters they encounter, most interestingly, the antagonists. Because as a character like Luffy travels arc to arc, it's Luffy bouncing off these antagonists that he comes up against that makes the arc interesting. Luffy is who Luffy is, but it's the way that he interfaces with these different people that makes things dope. Buggy the Clown, Crocodile, Eneru, Don Quixote, Doflamingo, etc. It's Luffy that stays the same each arc and those people who change, and the quality of the arc is largely dependent on the quality of the writing and the interest level that they're able to pull out of us in those antagonists. And how does Katakuri fit into all this? Well, of course, Katakuri, as I said in the last video, is mirror match Luffy. Katakuri is who Luffy would be if he was stronger, more experienced, smarter, had a better devil fruit, and had trained more with it. And it is by seeing Luffy pitted up against this sort of alternate universe version of himself that Luffy is able to learn things about himself and Katakuri is able to learn things about himself. So as the fight continues on, Luffy finds himself outclassed in every category to the point where he needs to escape because he uses Gear 4th, is able to exchange some blows with Katakuri, but has reached his time limit and needs to reconvene to recharge his haki. Luffy at this point has the ability to run away, but chooses to go back and fight Katakuri once he's recharged because he has decided that he wants to be the kind of man who could beat a man like Katakuri, the strongest member of the Yonko Big Mom pirate crew. Because just like his experience with Aokiji in Long Ring Land, he doesn't ever want to feel powerless or like he can't defeat a foe in this way. And thinking back to his training with Rayleigh, he knows he needs to put himself in situations where he's going to be pushed to force himself to evolve. And so he does. Luffy, having received observation haki training from Rayleigh, once he's back fighting Katakuri again, is able to tap into that ability that Katakuri has of brief glimpses of the future, and the fight starts to get more even. And as Katakuri admitted, he hasn't had a fight this hard in years, nor has he even been hit in years. And slowly but surely, this image of stoicism and cold determination begins to ebb away from Katakuri little by little as he develops sincere, genuine respect for Luffy. And then it all comes crashing down when this happens. Luffy is utterly blown the fuck out, canonically getting his stomach ripped open by Katakuri's spear. After which Katakuri performs an absolutely brutal combo of blows, just beating him down into unconsciousness. But as it turns out, it wasn't just Katakuri who made this happen. His little sister Flampe was watching the whole time, and she had used this blow dart that is silent and undetectable to hit Luffy in the leg with a tranquilizer to make him wobbly so that Katakuri could land that hit. It was this roller coaster of emotions for Katakuri, where he was taking Luffy seriously but not underestimating or overestimating him. Things went up and up and up as he saw how badass Luffy was capable of being and the fact that he didn't run away and he was learning observation haki. It crashed down to the ground when Luffy slipped up and Katakuri was able to hit him. But now that Katakuri has learned that it was Flampe's interference that allowed Katakuri to land this blow, it's got him fucked up. Flampe proceeds to laugh and mock Luffy for what a foolish, cowardly weakling he is and how perfect Katakuri is. But Katakuri, you were struggling a little too much with that guy. I'm the head of your fan club. I don't want to see you struggling that much, okay? And in response to this, Katakuri stabs himself, wounding himself in the same way he had wounded Luffy. Now, my initial reaction to this was, this is a bit much for me. It's a bit convenient that Luffy's opponent just happened to suddenly develop a sense of honor and decide to wound himself so that the fight would be even, you know, on a meta level, like, that's how Luffy's gonna win this one. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and we'll revisit that as we progress through this fight. After stabbing himself, Katakuri, for the first time publicly, rips off his big scarf thing and bares his full face to Flampe, the leader of his fan club, knowing full well that his appearance is mocked and remembering back to his childhood when it was that very thing that made people despise him. Flampe's reaction is instant disgust at the weakness and the gross face that Katakuri is displaying to her. No longer is he the perfect, pretty older brother that she idolized. Now he is a wounded, bloody, ugly, gulper eel motherfucker who she needs to talk shit about on a massive scale. Flampe feels betrayed by this deception that Katakuri was actually cool when now she found out that he's not, and feels the need to go spread the word to everyone after, of course, spitting in his fucking face. Needless to say, she's one of the most reprehensible people of all time.
Goddamn rich cunt! I kill rich cunts! Mother's getting the shit kicked out of her.
But Katakuri, knowing the motherfucking Chad that he is, and knowing the will that people like him and Luffy have, brushes right by them saying that he knows what's about to happen, and those people are completely irrelevant to him. Luffy, who's regained consciousness by this point, faces off against Katakuri, and their conqueror's haki clashes. Their determination to conquer this world clashes, and makes all those weak, cowardly people pass the fuck out, because they cannot hack it in the presence of men with true grit. For the first time since he was a child, Katakuri is not ashamed of how he looks, and it's because he is face to face with a man like Luffy. A man who in this very battle has been knocked down again and again, and is clearly on the losing side of this conflict. A reality that has Katakuri questioning, why does he keep getting up again and again as I knock him down? Don't you know that that is shameful in itself, and you should feel bad for even falling down? Where are you summoning this will to continually challenge me? It is in recognition of the fire that is in Luffy's soul that compels him to get up again and again and again that has Katakuri finally accept Luffy as an equal and an even opponent. Luffy has been growing more and more during this fight, figuring out, for example, how Katakuri is avoiding his attacks, because in this world, Haki would allow you to hit someone who's a Logia or a special Paramecia user like Katakuri, but with his Future Sight Observation Haki, Katakuri specifically morphs his body around the blows so they don't connect with him to begin with. And developing his own Future Sight, Luffy is able to occasionally get the upper hand on Katakuri, but sadly, it is still an utter beatdown. Recovering from this, Luffy's final trick is an adaptation of his Gear 4th power, Snake Man, which puts the emphasis on the speed of his attacks as opposed to the power of the base form of Gear 4th. Using the increased speed from this form, Luffy is able to snake his stretching arm around Katakuri in such a way that they're even more unpredictable and fast that just give Katakuri that much more difficulty avoiding them. Luffy has finally adapted his fighting style in the way that makes the most sense against someone like Katakuri, whose primary strength is his observation haki. Katakuri is relentless and a far more experienced fighter than Luffy, and it's with his awakened power, his peerless donuts, and unequivocally my favorite attack in the entirety of One Piece, Diced Mochi, in which Katakuri turns into a badass motherfucking donut. Alright, a donut literally rolls up on Luffy and smashes him with this big spiky arm in an utterly devastating blow. This attack right here is the perfect blending of badassness and utter ridiculous silliness that again makes One Piece great and makes Katakuri the best. Continually trading blows back and forth, Luffy continuing to take more damage, but just getting up again and again and again. The final blow finally comes. In typical shonen fashion, they each land the killing blow on each other, and they both collapse in a pile. We see Luffy rise first of the two, attempting to get back to his friends to continue whatever other bullshit's happening in this arc, but Katakuri looms over him. But when he still sees the fire burning in Luffy, even in this situation, no matter what happens to him, no matter how hard Katakuri hits, Katakuri's will finally lets out, and Katakuri falls, defeated for the first time ever. But before he goes, Luffy, of course, takes off his hat as a sign of respect and places it over Katakuri's mouth that he knows he doesn't want the world to see, because he respects him, because he's a real fucking man. Luffy escapes with his friends and begin to head out to sea, escaping Big Mom's territory at last. A few chapters later, we come back to Katakuri collapsed in the mirror world, and there we see Brûlé, who has come to help take care of him and help him recover. Turns out, after being used and abused this whole arc by the Straw Hat Pirates, Brûlé is actually a much nicer person, at least to her siblings, than we thought she was. Brûlé, being not too much a younger sibling than Katakuri, seeing Katakuri on his back, breaking that rumor that had been spread about him for so long, Brûlé says, "Katakuri, I've known that you were faking this entire time." To which Katakuri reacts in the most adorable way, with a big ol' blush. But Brûlé sincerely just wishes that Katakuri would be the way he used to be. To which we finally get the full flashback that was alluded to during the fight, in which we see a young, naive Katakuri hanging with his family and just chowing down unabashedly, not afraid to be himself or show himself eating like he is these days. Having his big old freakish lantern jaw with the scars on his face, he gets attacked regularly, but he's not afraid of it because he knows he's strong enough to beat up anybody who challenges him, and he'll be damned if he's not gonna be himself in public. But then he gets the news that his little sister Brûlé, this Brûlé in this scene right here, has been attacked and given a gigantic scar across the face, one that has defined her character for this entire arc, and we are just now learning the origin and how it relates to Katakuri. Katakuri is so deeply wounded by the fact that someone would attack his friends or family instead of him when he has beef with them, that it utterly changes the way he views the world. Brûlé attempts to tell him that it doesn't hurt. Just be yourself, Katakuri. I don't want you to hide yourself for my benefit. But it's too late. Katakuri has already internalized this lesson. Never be yourself. Never be vulnerable. Protect yourself at all costs, and no one will be able to hurt you. Coming out of the flashback, Brûlé tells Katakuri that the Straw Hats have escaped, and Katakuri can't help but crack a smile, as he can't help but feel joy at the fact that Straw Hat, this man he's developed this respect for, has escaped. Now that you know the story, let's analyze the character and why he's the best. We find out the true character of Katakuri in this order. First, he's stern and perfect, the way everyone perceives him in the Big Mom Pirates. Eventually, he gets separated to fight one-on-one with Luffy, in which he looks down on Luffy, but doesn't totally underestimate him. He takes him seriously and tries to kill him. Luffy proves more resilient than he expected, and actually is able to expose Katakuri during his most private of moments. In the ensuing battle, though Katakuri is able to take the upper hand, seeing Luffy continually be beaten down again and again, but keep getting up even when faced with someone as powerful as Katakuri, slowly instills in Katakuri a deep respect for this man. One that is only increased by Luffy's lack of excuses after he gets hurt. But here's where things get serious. What is it that made Katakuri respect Luffy so much that he was willing to do something like cut his own stomach open so that he'd fight one-on-one with Luffy? If you think about everything that we know about Katakuri, it makes perfect sense. Katakuri is a man defined by the expectations of others. The naive Katakuri we saw as a child was totally willing to be open with everyone because he had the self-confidence that he could handle any problem with his own merit, and therefore he didn't need to hide himself because he could still protect himself. But when those cowardly motherfuckers went and got revenge against him by attacking his sister, that's when Katakuri learned that it wasn't enough to just be strong yourself. You had to make yourself seem like an impregnable fortress, or else people would attempt to get to you. And so that's the policy he adopted, never showing weakness, never allowing anyone to get something over on him without swift punishment, to spread the rumor that you do not fuck with Katakuri. But that's not the real Katakuri. The real Katakuri is this one right here. The boy who was so deeply upset by his sister being hurt that he changed his entire life around it. But what made Katakuri respect Luffy is that Luffy has what Katakuri lacks. Yes, Luffy is your archetypal shonen hero. And what defines the archetypal shonen hero more than anything else? Determination. The fact that they will never, ever give up and never let anything stop them. Katakuri, on the other hand, is a man who has let life stop him, who has let life hold him back and hold him in place. Why does Katakuri wear the mask? Because if he didn't, people would ridicule him, and ridiculing him means vulnerability, and vulnerability means people around him will get hurt, and he cannot take that risk. Everything Katakuri does in his life is dictated around how to be the most effective protector of his friends and family, as well as his own ego. Because at some point along the line, he became deeply ashamed of himself, because Katakuri is not an impregnable mental fortress like somebody like Luffy is. Yes, he's dumb, but Luffy uses that as a strength to never have his foundations of his life shaken, but Katakuri has. And this is why I unequivocally think that Katakuri is the best written character in all of One Piece by a fucking mile. And this is no small thing. I'm not trying to diminish the quality of the writing of One Piece, but thinking back about all the heroes and all the villains and everything in between that I've met in my 15-year journey reading One Piece, there really is no one more human than Katakuri, the badass main antagonist of an arc of a shonen battle manga, and his defining characteristic is his social anxiety. And honestly, Oda really summed it up himself in the Volume 8 SBS, in which a writer asked, "Odachi, you revealed Katakuri's shocking true face, so is it your policy to not draw perfect characters? Incidentally, because of this, I feel closer to Katakuri. If he has to carry around such an image, it would really build up stress." To which Oda replied, "How nice, Minami Maru-kun. You ask if it's a policy, but perfect people are so boring. People love each other's flaws." Deep story. You're damn right we do, Oda. You're damn right we do. For Katakuri, the biggest danger in the world isn't Luffy or these pirate crews or anybody coming and attacking them. He can handle that. The biggest danger for him is his family members thinking that he's not cool anymore. And let's be real here. This is a real, tangible thing that happens in the Big Mom Pirates. Big Mom is an evil, tyrannical overlord. She is a cannibal. She has nearly killed her children in this very arc, and her children openly discuss murdering one another. It is a dog-eat-dog world out there in the Big Mom Pirates. And Katakuri's just a good old boy trying to get by. This false identity of stoicism and badassery and a complete lack of weaknesses, it's all a defense mechanism to cope with the world. And even after this fight with Luffy, we can still see him embarrassed about this because he's got so much learning to do. He is a 48-year-old man who has spent most of that time hiding his true self from the world out of necessity. And to get back to the central question, the reason Katakuri hurt himself was because for the first time, Katakuri was fighting someone he truly respected, a man who possessed the qualities that he wished that he had, the drive, the persistence, the willingness to follow his ideals, to challenge someone of the status that Katakuri possessed. That is what Katakuri saw in Luffy. And when Flampe intervened and wounded Luffy, disturbing the battle of ideals going on between Katakuri and Luffy, Katakuri, on a philosophical, ideological level, rejected that this would be the reason, that this person would be the one to decide who would win. Someone like Flampe, who found Luffy's unwillingness to give up disgusting, reprehensible, and laughable. Katakuri wouldn't stand for that shit, and so he did what he had to do. He wounded himself so that they would be on an even playing field. Ideologically, it would be the battle that Katakuri desired between Luffy's existence of freedom and self-determinism and Katakuri's existence of compromise. That is why he smiled and was happy to see Luffy and his friends had gotten away. Luffy's lifestyle ideologically proved superior to the existence of compromise that Katakuri had been consumed by for decades. Luffy's victory was the inner self that Katakuri had been suppressing, its victory as well. But let's continue this conversation at another location, shall we? You know, I've been reading One Piece for 15 years, and when I say that a character is the best character in that entire runtime, I'm saying something beyond that I just like a character in a shonen manga. I'm saying that this thing that I've decided to make a major part of my life for over a decade has risen to a level where I feel a deep personal connection with the character. I just want people to understand what a massive impact on my life this one silly little series about goofy pirates on silly adventures has been, and how much it means to find within this battle manga that does not need to be anything other than the 12 to 20-year-old demographic pushing adventure, male, macho, goofy series that it is, to bring in a character like Katakuri while maintaining the level of goofiness and silliness that a donut mochi man inherently is, and to keep that spirit alive, everything I've loved up to this point, while making a character that I can relate to more than anyone in, I can't even think of any fiction. Katakuri is not like a Kamina. Luffy is like a Kamina. Katakuri is like a Simone. And Katakuri relates to Luffy in the way that Simone relates to Kamina. In that, and Kamina, at least as they're seen to the general public, to most people, are archetypes. And that's how I think of them the most. But Katakuri and Simone, we can see them grow and change over the series. We can see the deeper level thoughts that they have to go through to complete their character arcs. And that's why, while someone like Kamina I look up to as an idol, as I see being the missing piece of myself that I want to obtain and add to my consciousness, Katakuri is my brother in arms against, as silly as it may sound, social anxiety, the pressures of our society pushing in on us to be a certain way, to define ourselves in a certain way, to not be our true selves, to not let ourselves be the person we want to be, but to have all these expectations as to how we're supposed to live our lives and all that that entails. Katakuri has learned from Luffy the way that I have learned from Kamina. And that is why he's not a father, he's not a god, he's my brother. And I love him as a brother. That's what Katakuri is to me in the context of One Piece that has been this series that has been my companion in life for 15 years, and it's not stopping anytime soon. So this one's for you, Katakuri. Stay strong, buddy.
Such as you and I, Jack. Long we tossed on the rolling main. Now we're safe ashore. Yuma, don't forget your old shipmate. Rolly, 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 rolly. For an excavation. Long we tossed on the rolling main. Now we're safe ashore, Jack. Hey, Dan, don't forget your old shipmate. Rolly, 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 go.